Hello, everybody. This is Rob. It's time for a brand new episode of Member Talks. And today's episode is, as I say, exciting. They're always exciting, but today's episode really is. We're going to talk today with Linda Finley. Linda is the founder of something called the Grief Cruises. And I want to give you a little background on her to kind of lead us into this conversation. Linda founded Grief Cruises in 2015. She's so far escorted at least 3 groups on these special healing cruises. Linda's background, back in 1989, she became a bereaved parent with the loss of her infant daughter, Aubrey Marie. And she immediately found herself thrown into what she refers to as the bereavement world. 2 years later, in 1991, Linda founded Mourning Discoveries and Grief Support Services. Since that time, she's filled the role of aftercare coordinator for funeral homes, currently representing over 300 funeral homes in 25 states and Canada. Linda has also continually facilitated several bereavement support groups as a hospice volunteer and an AARP widowed person service volunteer trainer. Linda, welcome to Member Talks. You got a lot going on there.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here with you. Yeah.
Wow. So I heard it was nice to meet you. It's nice to meet you. Let me start by saying that. And
thank you.
I found out about you through one of our past guests, Tom McConnell, who's with Eternal Remembrance. He was talking about the Grief Cruises, and I kept thinking, what is the Grief Cruises? I'd not heard of that before. And he was nice enough to, I guess they say, introduce, if you will, the two of us. But thanks for coming on and talking about the Grief Cruises with us. I really, this is something that's very interesting to me, and I'd like to dive into this a little bit. But, you know, we read your bio there, and it sounds like you got quite a bit going on.
Yeah, I do. That's what I say. I do have a lot of hats that I wear. The Grief Cruises being one of them. So yes. Yeah.
Well, tell me, for starters, where are you located?
I'm actually outside of Greenville, South Carolina.
Okay.
In a little town called Simpsonville.
Okay. Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. So I don't hear the South Carolina accent though.
No, I'm originally from New York State, upstate New York. So so I'm a transplant here about 8 years ago.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So, very good.
Yeah.
Well, tell us, what is the Grief Cruises? This was really interesting to me hearing Tom talk about it, but tell us, what are the Grief Cruises and why were they started?
Okay. Well, they were started just because I've worked with so many families through the years, and other people like myself who work with families, and it's been chit-chatted about that somebody should put a cruise together. And so I was a travel agent before life, and I always said that later on I might want to, get involved in a travel agency because I love to travel. And when I moved to South Carolina, it was like a time for me to make a decision what I was going to do. And I coordinated with a dear friend of mine who works in our bereavement world and does a lot of support work. And we started talking about putting this cruise together. And so I bought a travel agency so that I would be the only person that would take care of our special guests, because that is truly part of the experience that the guest has with the Grief Cruises, is that first phone call. I'm not just, travel agent booking a cabin and saying, see you on your way. So that's one special thing that's important to me. And so we put together our first cruise, and we call our program, it's Seminars at Sea program. And what it is we combine a cruise with a grief seminar. And we just took our 4th cruise. We did 2 or 3 before COVID. We had one scheduled in April of 2020. That was canceled because of COVID. And then our next sailing, we went out December of 2021. And so each time what we do is we have days that we're out to sea. And so we schedule different seminars and workshops and activities that people can participate in on those days that we're out to sea. And then also we have small group sessions that we hold at night that are more specific to the type of loss. Because I recognize, or my team recognizes that, people need that support. And so we provide an opportunity for them to come to on this cruise, and we pick some really nice ships, and they have that time to enjoy the cruise itself and also, get some tools. We tell our guests that they're going to leave with a toolbox, and, they'll have lots of different ways that they can learn how to, deal with their grief. It doesn't matter how long ago they lost their loved one. So there's, can be somebody who just lost their loved one just before the cruise sailed. We have people that are 20 and 25 years out that have joined us on the grief cruise just because they feel that they're with their people, they're with their group of people. So that's essentially what it is. The seminars at sea combined with a beautiful cruise, and it's been very successful. We've got wonderful reviews from all of our guests. And the biggest comment, our first cruise was a 3-night, and everybody said it needs to be a little longer. So we did a 5-night. Everybody said it needed to be a little longer, and then we did a 7-night. And so they still think it needs to be longer. It's kind of like when you run a support group. I'll run like a 6-week support group. And at the end of that time, people always want more, and I've done 10 weeks and they want more. So obviously they're getting a lot out of it. And then the other thing is too, I always say that in conclusion of what I think my goal is with this cruise is to help people recognize that grief and joy can coexist. We need to do that at some point down the line when we have a loss. We somehow have to come to that. And this cruise helps people to realize that maybe a little bit quicker or a little bit in depth, because they do realize I'm here because of my loved one, but yet I'm enjoying this cruise and I'm going out to dinner with these new friends and I'm doing excursions. And so that's my hope, that people will learn that both joy and grief can coexist and they can live a healthy, happy life. And so that's been a very positive result of the cruise. It's not a doom and gloom. We're going to cry for, 7 days. We don't do that. So yeah, there's another couple things that are special about our cruise. We do have a walk to remember that we do on top deck at night with our glow sticks. We don't use candles. And we have a remembrance service for our loved ones that we've lost. And we also offer burials at sea. So if there's families that are interested in burying their loved ones at sea, we have a program for that. And we coordinate it. And obviously, there's a set number that we can have. But that's been something that I say, for me, has been the most special event that I've ever been a part of. And believe me, you see my Bible there. I've been part of a lot of events and special things. And that is just so special. And so those are the highlights of the cruise, all of that.
Now, is that limited to cremation burial at sea, or is that actual casket burial? Or
no, it's just cremation.
Okay.
And so what the family can do is what they've done is just bring some of the cremains. They don't usually bring all of them. We can't disperse the cremains overboard. We actually have to have the cremains put in a soluble biodegradable urn. Sure. And so the family I make sure that they have all that. And then they also need the death certificate and the cremation certificate for the loved one. Mm-hmm. We have to hand that all into the ship. And then once we coordinate that, we get on board, they tell us when it's going to be. And then what's real special for the families is they actually get a certificate that has the coordinates of where we actually dispersed the cremains. And what's nice about that is they actually call the bridge when the cremains go over to get those coordinates. And so they put a beautiful certificate together. This past time, they actually laminated them and they looked really beautiful. Wow. So that's just another special momentum for, these families that participate in that.
So these are people that are contacting you, I would assume, from all over the country, that have heard about the grief cruises, that want to participate, where are you setting out from? Is it like the normal cruise areas, Florida or
so far we've only sailed out of Florida. We've sailed out of Tampa, Cape Canaveral, Miami. So and just to tell you, we have had guests as far as Australia and the United Kingdom.
Wow. So these are people coming from all over the world. They don't know each other. They've never met each other, but they're coming onto this cruise because they all have one thing in common. And at some point in their life, they've experienced loss and they've experienced grief, and they're coming to gain support. They're coming to gain the toolbox, as you say, of how to cope. Yeah. I'm assuming that they're leaving this cruise with lifelong friends at this point.
They are. Yes, they are.
And that's lifelong relationships with people.
Yep. And we have people who've come to all of them so far. So we do have our little following going on as well. So
really?
That's really neat. Yeah. I've got a bunch of people who say, this is my thing. This is my cruise. I don't care what ship it is. I don't care where it's going or where it's coming from. I'm going. This is my thing. And that really warms my heart, because it's like, wow, this is their thing. Because it is some, when we lose our loved ones, we're so limited as to what can we do to honor them and feel that connection to them? And this is just one way of being able to feel that connection. And it's okay. Like, there's no white elephant on the ship. We all know why we're there. So that I think is important too. And another aspect is that people, which you probably know working with families, they feel if they go on vacation, they're dishonoring their loved one by doing that because they're going to have fun. Well, this takes that all away because they're actually there because of their loved ones. And so there's all these other different thoughts that our guests have. But yeah, they do leave with their lifelong friends. They truly do.
That's really neat. That really is. I see I'm looking at the website as well while we're talking. You mentioned about the burial at sea and the small groups, night of remembrance. You also do a memorial photo shoot. You've got grief art projects, all sorts of different things that you get people involved with to help express their grief.
Yep, a lot of hands-on stuff. We do aromatherapy, we do crafts, we do yoga, Reiki. We've done a lot of different activities in addition to the actual workshops and seminars. So we kind of have, nice mix of, hands-on and then, learning about how they can deal with their grief. And then also a very important part is those small groups at night, because again, those are specific to the type of loss. And so those people actually get together with one of our facilitators and they can actually talk about that specific loss. So that's real helpful for people as well.
Is the goal to do one cruise a year? Is that the idea?
That has been our goal, is to do one cruise a year. I think we did book 2 one year. And I think actually that was the year that COVID hit. We had 2. And thank goodness we did have the second one because the April one got canceled. So the goal is to go out once a year and just kind of find the right ship that has the right meeting space. Because again, that's important to me that our group can be in a nice space that's private. And so the last 2 cruises that we had our own kinds of, actually a state-of-the-art conference center that we've had. And we actually build a memory wall for our loved ones with pictures and stuff like that. We leave that up for the entire time with a fake candle burning for the week, because obviously we can't have a candle on a cruise ship. Yeah. But we do a lot of really neat stuff in the meeting space that we have, nobody else comes into. There's no other guests on the ship that can get into that space. So it's really private. Same thing with our small groups. People just can't walk through or walk in. It's just a very private, nice space for our group.
Are you limited in the amount of people that can come to this?
We're limited in the sense that when we usually have booked these cruises 24 months in advance, if not longer, because the meeting space goes quick. Right. And again, we have to have our specific meeting space. And so we always deposit a certain number of cabins. I always anticipate 200. Just to get the space for 200. And we've not had that number yet, but we have doubled each cruise, our number of guests up until COVID. And then everything just the whole cruise industry just kind of shut down for 18 months.
Yeah.
I mean, we can take as many, I don't actually want it to get too big because I think it takes a lot of the personalized service out of that. But we always anticipate 20 or 200, whether we've had them or not. We want to make sure we have that space. And then as far as cabins, we deposit a certain number of cabins. And we always, even if we fill our block, there's usually cabins that we can book right up until the sail date. So that's not usually a problem. We can always find cabins for people.
Well, it's definitely a needed program. I mean, it sounds similar in aspects of like a death cafe where people can come together and talk and learn. And this takes it one step further, obviously, with the cruise and gives that ambiance to it as well. But it definitely shows that there is a need, and people do need to have these conversations. They do want to have these conversations. And many times it just isn't, there's not an availability for it. There's not an outlet. And this is definitely I would say a niche market, so to speak, but it's definitely an outlet for people to come together and put a couple of different hobbies, if you will, as far as if you're into cruises and things. But I think it's a great idea. I think it's a great program that you got going. And
thank you so much.
Yeah. I'm really excited for it.
Well, if you think about it, there's a theme cruise for everything, every hobby, and there's never been a theme cruise for grief. So, I mean, it's just, we need a grief cruise because there's so many people. Every one of us is going to experience grief at some point in our life. So we need this theme cruise to be available for people. And that's our hope, is to create awareness of the cruise so that more people will find us. Because, you know, we're just a small outfit here. And we just kind of, you know, do our little marketing promos here, there, and the other place, but, you know, nothing big time or anything like that. So, yeah. We'd like to create awareness of the cruise because it is very special.
So before I shift gears on you, I just wanted to point out, it looks like on the website, the next upcoming cruise, January 30 through February 4th of 2023. Is that right?
Okay. So right after we made this time to talk, Royal Caribbean actually canceled a bunch of sailings in 2023 on the Mariner of the Seas, which was the ship that we're on. So unfortunately, right after we did our big blurb of, you know, our first huge, you know, marketing effort for this cruise, it was canceled. But it's not a problem. I had people that were already booked. I'm currently trying to secure space. I was hoping to secure it by today, but that didn't happen. But I'll update the website. We'll definitely have a cruise that will be replaced by another, probably a bigger ship, because we like the big ships. But anyway, so that should be resolved hopefully by this week, if not next week. Good. But we will have one next year.
Well, you'll have to keep us posted so we can continue to look for it. I want to shift gears on you a little bit because I read something in your bio at the beginning of this that also caught my eye. It said that in 1991, you founded Morning Discoveries, as in MOURNING Discoveries, and the Grief Support Services. And I wanted to also talk with you about that. When I clicked on those, it took me to another website, the Funeral Service Aftercare Solutions. And I wanted to kind of talk with you a little bit about that as well. One of the things that I've discovered over the years of talking about funerals and things, aftercare is a word that, for lack of better terms, gets tossed around quite a bit, and it means a lot of different things. It sounds like it means caring after the death, providing support after the death. Unfortunately, I think a lot of times it gets used as pre-need. But your use of it is truly what it sounds like, is we're providing some solutions for people, or some options for people to work through your grief. Tell us a little bit about this Morning Discoveries and what you started there, because it to me it looks really interesting on your website.
Yeah. As you said, I started that. Well, officially formed Morning Discoveries in 1991, but I was actually working with families prior to that, a couple of years prior to that. But anyhow, I kind of had started talking to funeral directors, and how that got started is I had worked with hospice as a volunteer running some of their support groups. And I started meeting funeral directors, and I started asking them, what do you do when your loved one or your families come in, their loved one died, you take care of them those few days. What do you do for the families to provide support? Because it all was tied into when I lost my daughter. I felt like, not from the funeral, our funeral home was absolutely wonderful, but I just felt like the whole world didn't acknowledge that loss. And so I kind of made it my own mission to bring resources together and kind of help people, with their grief. And so I started talking to my funeral director friends, and they kept saying, the answer always was, I don't do anything, but I should. And I've gotten that answer, and I've gone to NFDA, I've done state associations. I always ask, what do you provide for aftercare? And a lot of funeral homes say, I don't, but I should. And so the should turned into, I kind of put together some programs, and I just went to the funeral directors and I said, here, I got these mailings I can send out for you throughout the year. I can call your families and check in on them. And so they liked it. And so I just kind of put all these programs together depending on what the funeral home wanted to provide to their families. And I think that they found out pretty quick, as I did as well, is that, we're checking in with families down the road. And I'm talking 5, 6, 7 months down the road. First off, they're shocked that I'm still checking in on them on behalf of the funeral home. Second off, I can assure you that most of them don't have that circle of support that maybe they had for that first month even. They're lucky if they even had that support into the second month. So it's a really wonderful service to kind of keep connecting with that family, especially during that first year. And so all of my programs include checking with the families throughout that first year, whether the funeral home just wants me to send out books. I don't know if you see on my website, I actually wrote a series of 5 books.
Yeah.
They're now called the I Care Grief Support Series. And each of those books were written to be received throughout that first year. And each of those books address issues that maybe are common for that person in their grief journey. And so we mail those out. We have a holiday one that goes out by the 15th of November of each year. And so it's just been a wonderful opportunity, again, to provide that continuation of support. And when you say, you just mentioned pre-need, I do believe that, aftercare means different things at different funeral homes. Like I'll ask them, what do you do for aftercare? I've had funeral directors say to me, well, we go to the home and we drop off, some more prayer cards and some laminated obituaries and that kind of stuff. And it's like, aftercare, I always say, if it doesn't provide grief support, an opportunity for families to learn about what grief can be for them, and an opportunity to talk about their loss, it's kind of nice, some of the things that we do, but it really doesn't help with the grief. It's the grief and how the family handles it. And so that is the core of all the programs that I provide. It has to provide those resources that people can read, have that opportunity to talk to me whenever they're having, a hard day, or I'm following up with them on a schedule. So it's just very well received. Again, my families through my funeral homes, they just always make their comments. I can't believe my funeral director is actually doing this. And I have families who go to other funeral homes who call me because their friend went to the one who got this aftercare program. They want to know, what's this about? And I'll send out the whole set of books. I've never charged anybody extra for any extra books. I just figure I've been so blessed to work with so many funeral homes and for so many years that's my way of giving back. So just my program has just been really wonderfully received. And then about 3 years ago, I partnered with the International Grief Institute. So that's where you see where I come under that umbrella with Linda Child Fell. Yeah. And she had been doing a lot of education and grief support in the workplace. And so I came to her and I said, well, can we put together some kind of training for funeral directors to become a certified aftercare specialist? And so we created a program that trains funeral directors to become a certified aftercare specialist. And so we've run with that now for about 3 years. And so it's just educating funeral homes on how to provide aftercare and actually giving them all the tools to do it. And so that was one of the things that was important to me is, wanting to give the funeral home, if you don't want me to do your aftercare, that's fine, but here are the tools that you can use to follow up with your families. And so that's been a great accomplishment there, is putting that together. There is no other aftercare certification that I know of in the country. So it's really neat that we have that. I think we've got about 80 aftercare specialists right now.
Wow.
That are funeral directors. We do have some that are planning counselors, but we mostly funeral directors have gotten a certification. So, yeah.
It's really good to hear. It's really good to hear because, frankly, in my experience of being in funeral service, there's this very big disconnect between the final amen at a funeral, the final goodbye at a funeral, and what happens next. Right. And funeral directors are just awesome when it comes to serving families. They really are. They're just empathetic. They care. They're doing what they are called to do. The drawback is most of them don't have that next step. They know how to get to that final amen, and they know how to get to that final goodbye.
Yeah.
But then it's in many times handed off to somebody for the what happens next, what happens after the grief, and families are experiencing this, and it's not a bad thing that it happens that way. It's not something that's trained on. It's not something that's done. It's not something that there's a lot of time doing, especially at a busy funeral home. If you have, another family right coming in the door as one's leaving.
Yeah, you go right. That's right. You go from one family to the next, and it's very easy to not be able to do anything more, depending on the size of the firm and the number of people you have to help. Yeah.
The drawback, though, is now the family's left with, okay, now what?
Yeah.
Now what do we do? And this is a great program that will step in and say, here's what you can do. Here's something that's an option for you. Here's some books that you can read. Here's some literature. Here's some different tools that you can follow. And I talked to so many families that have experienced a loss, And within a few months, a few years later, they're talking about maybe doing something for themselves, getting something set up for themselves. But usually they're still even confused at that point of, boy, I don't know. It seems like we were brought right to the edge, and that was where we were left. And now we're here. And there's this big span.
Yep.
I just, programs, aftercare programs that are specific to aftercare, not marketing tools. Yes, there is some marketing opportunities. Yes, there is some
automatically realize that circle.
Yeah.
That is the connect.
Yeah.
Is that aftercare. And those families are going to come back to the funeral home for pre-need, because it's just that natural flow of, Linda sent me these books throughout the year, and it was good information. So when I send a pre-need brochure 8 months down the road, if that's what my funeral director wants me to do, that's information to them. That's more information. It's not me trying to sell them something. So there's many, many times that at that point they're saying, what is this about? And then I make that connection. But it's the aftercare that bridges the time of need and the pre-need. And without that, obviously a lot of funeral homes operate like that. But again, the grieving person gets left out of that time frame of being supported. Yeah.
And again, they're not left out on purpose, just for lack of better, they just don't know how to bridge that gap.
Yeah.
This is a great opportunity to bridge that gap. And it is a natural progression from at need into pre-need. But you have to have that bridge to get to that point. You can't just have the at need and then immediately go into a pre-need situation and say, okay, now that you've seen how rough it is, let's get it set up. You got to have somebody walk you through, hold your hand to get you through, if you will. And this is a great opportunity. So there's 5 books that are in this program. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
It looks like starting out is book 1. Is that Taking Steps, Day by Day, Seeking Hope, and then Holiday Tips. Holiday Tips is a great one.
Yeah, it's real
That's
important.
a great
Support
one.
our families.
Holidays are rough with people.
Yes, they are.
Wow.
And not even just the first holiday. Those holidays come around every year, and that loved one is still not there. So I have people call me like 2-3 years later saying, I had to pull out my book and I had to reread some things that maybe I can be doing here to help me get through this holiday, because they're never going to be the same. Ever.
Well, and along with that is that whole surprise. I don't even know what you call it, but I call it the surprise visit, where you just happen to be walking down the street or something and you see somebody that looks just like your loved one. And it just, the first, even the 20th time that happens throws you for such a loop that you don't know what to do.
And I can't tell you that exact thing I've talked about. I've done so many different workshops with families, and I'll use that as an example, how, people will say they thought they saw their loved one, and they actually will pursue that. Like in a grocery store, they'll go look to see. And without fail, when I get out of that session, I've got so many people going, that happened to me. That's exactly what happened to me, because you think that it's only happening to you. And when they hear that is just a common experience, there's something in that. That is something common. We know that our loved one died, but I'm going to go look just to make sure. And they know otherwise.
Well, I think it's really, I hate to generalize it, but I think it's really kind of a Western culture idea that when death happens, we kind of internalize, and we tend to believe that we're on this journey by ourselves. And, other cultures really embrace and come and support, but at least where we're at here, I think that there's a lot of this. I'm going through this process by myself. The answer to that is no, you're not. There are people all over the place that are going through this very same journey.
Yeah.
And what you're providing with the grief cruises, what you're providing with the aftercare program, is the ability for people to recognize that there are other people that are out there that are experiencing, I don't want to say the same thing, but definitely experiencing grief, similar things. Yeah. And how do you get through it? Well, the best way, as with everything, is to talk about it, to share it, and to experience it. And you're that catalyst that provides that opportunity for people to do that.
Yeah. That's
So
what
I'm
we say, is
excited.
create that space. Yeah, we create that space for people to have the support that they need. So yeah, it is all good work. It's all
Yeah.
good work.
I'm excited. I think what you guys are doing are wonderful. And frankly, I'm glad that Tom, when we were talking with him, he's like, you know who you need to talk to? You
Yeah, because
really
we had
need
a
to.
really nice conversation about everything. Yeah, that was cool.
That was I'm really glad that he said that. And that's actually
Yeah.
where we find a lot of our speakers that come on here is just
Wow.
from other people referring them. And
Yeah.
that's been awesome. I want to really briefly, I know we're kind of getting a little bit lengthy, but I wanted to talk briefly as well. You mentioned it, the Certified Aftercare Specialist program. That's something, if you have a aftercare specialist, you said you've got about 80 so far. What a great benefit to your funeral home.
Yes, it is.
To have a person, if not a whole team of people, to be able to be true aftercare specialists, not pre-planning specialists, not advanced planning specialists, but true aftercare. My job is to go in after the funeral, after the death, and come along beside the family, walk with them through this journey, provide them with information, provide them with tools, and be there as they need. I think a lot of times, and I may be wrong on this, but in my thoughts, I think a lot of times people get so worried about being counselors and possibly giving the wrong information or whatever. But it's really just about being honest and sharing love with people that need it at the time.
It's about companioning with them and providing resources that most people, especially when they're grieving, don't have the bandwidth to look for resources. I mean, with the internet, you would think that wouldn't be a true statement, but it is. And, our certified aftercare specialist training, not only we have many modules on grief education, because I know that there's not any place where we get an in-depth look at grief and how families respond to it, but we also provide all the tools. And in saying that, the training does include, we don't just train you and send you back to your funeral home. We give you all of the tools. We have what's called the Aftercare Solutions Manual, which comes with the training. And it also has a companion website that is just for our specialists, where they can go and actually print on demand anything for an 8-week support group if they want to do that, a holiday service. We have all the templates. We have all the literature. We have so much content on this library that they have access to, not only for their aftercare program, but to actually put in their funeral homes, to put in their time and need packets. So that's a real important piece of this training. Not only do we train them and certify them, we also give them the tools. And then even further than that, we support our specialists. They call us all the time and they'll say, well, do you have this? I need this. We'll help them for as long as I'm here and I'm able to work. We will support our specialists. We just started a coach calling opportunity for our specialists. So if they go through the training, they can schedule a coach call with me after the training so that they can kind of ask questions once everything's absorbed. There's no additional cost for that. They just come back with great questions, and I can actually sit with them individually and help them set up their aftercare programs. And they love that piece. So that we just added that after our last training in January. So that's been very well received by our funeral directors. Yeah.
Nice. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, Linda, I'd love to sit and talk more with you on this. There's so much that we can get into, but I do want to share some contact information. How can people reach out to you? How can they reach out to either Morning Discoveries, or if they're interested in joining one of the cruises, how can they reach out and find you to be able to connect and to be able to get this information?
Well, the best way is obviously to call. So you have my phone number. I can give you that to call me. But I work under International Grief Institute. So we have a website, which is internationalgriefinstitute.com. And then for the funeral directors for the aftercare programs, it's morningdiscoveries.com. And that's MOURNING discoveries.com. So either one of those two ways. And then the grief cruises is www.thegriefcruises.com. And so that website, there's a form people can fill out. My phone number's on there. My email's on there. I love questions. I love when people call me and want to know what we're doing and all of that. So it's just a welcome phone call from anybody who wants information about any of the things we talked about today.
Yeah. Now, the International Grief Institute, it looks like you've got a board of directors. And one of them, Sharon, and I can never pronounce her last name. Help me out. It's Sharon G. Mascarello. Is that right?
Yeah, I don't know. I think she's actually, Linda knows her.
Oh, okay.
And has worked with her or something like that. Yeah. So
she's been on our show here once before as well.
Oh, cool.
We've had the opportunity to talk with her. So
wow.
Yeah, a lot of different mutual connections there.
Yeah, of course there are. Yeah. Our paths all cross one way or another.
That's right. That's
yeah.
Right. Well, Linda, this has been great. It's been very educational, and I really would love to see these grief cruises take off and really become a thing. To me, it seems like a great fit for people. I love the fact that people are building relationships with other people from across the world that are experiencing the same thing. And I think that's just the neatest thing ever, because really that's what life is about, is building relationships.
It is.
And this is a great tool to do that. So thank you.
May I share? I just want to share one more thing with you that I think is really cool too, if that's okay. This last cruise, we had a filming company reach out to us a couple of years ago that came across the grief cruises and was really intrigued with what we're doing. And so they were going to go on the 2020 cruise with us. Well, of course, that got canceled. And so everything was dropped. Well, anyhow, they ended up coming on this cruise with us, and they brought a friend of theirs who had lost his life partner. And so they were kind of following him with his grief journey and wanted to know what this whole grief cruise thing was about. And so they came on the cruise with. They're absolutely wonderful. My biggest concern was I don't want them to be intrusive with my group. I got to protect my group, but they were just absolutely phenomenal. And what they're doing is they're creating a documentary about grief and about the grief cruise itself. And so that should be out by the end of April, which I will have access to. So we're really excited about that. They're going to actually pitch it in the UK. They're going to pitch it in the US and see if like Netflix will pick it up. Now, I don't know if they will, but it will really highlight what this cruise is about, because I told the owner of the production company, I said, I can't adequately describe to you exactly what the grief cruises is unless you experience it. And after she experienced it, she said to me, she goes, I am just blown away at exactly what was going on this cruise for these families. She says, and you were right. There is no way to accurately describe it unless you actually experience it. And so we're really excited because we hope that will help to create awareness of what we're doing as well. So they were interested in us and they got their footage, and we'll see what they come out with. So that'll be exciting.
Keep our fingers crossed. We see it on Netflix one of these days.
I know, wouldn't that be so cool? But I will share that with you when I do get the documentary. They told me I can share it with anybody I want. I can put that out there.
We would love to see it, and we'll definitely post it on all of our sites to help share the word so people know about the grief cruises for sure.
Yeah, thank you.
That's great. Thanks for sharing that with me. I'm excited to see that.
Yeah.
Well, Linda, wonderful to meet you. Thank you for coming on board. Thanks for being a part of as we say, joining our conversation. This has been a lot of fun. I would highly recommend and encourage you, if you're listening and you want more information, go to thegriefcruises.com, check it out. There you'll also find some additional links to some of the other websites that Linda's a part of as well that we've talked about. So thank you so much. And thank you all for listening. Bye, everybody.